There's no need for introduction. It was done already. So I'll give my talk now. So my talk will be about patient-centric pharmaceutical drug product design and regarding inhalation drug therapy, if this is a reality for the years to come. Hopefully it will. So I'll start by giving you a bit an overview of what is patient-centric drug product design. So patient-centric drug product design is the science of identifying the comprehensive needs of the target patient population and use that knowledge to design adequate drug products that can take the most benefit to risk ratio for the patients. And how can we can perceive the patient-centric model basically from the image that is provided. So the patient is always at the center and it's in contact with all the different stakeholders involved in the healthcare provision. Adequate relationships are built, and with this the patient feels really empowered and with an active voice and contributes to the decision-making process for the therapy to be provided. The patient-centric model takes into consideration that the patients are involved early into the development process, and we all discussed about this. We all know that it's very important to have patient feedback since the beginning of every development program. The goal is, of course, to ensure that the product that we are developing really meets the specific needs of the target patient population. Ideally, it's an intuitive drug product that the patients can use without the need to have specific trainings. Of course, we all know that this for inhalation devices is a bit complicated, but of course, the more intuitive, the better. Specific needs of patients are considered, of course, and this interaction then leads to a healthy outcome. So the situation we have with the pharmaceutical industry is that we live in a heavily regulated environment. It's very difficult to bring innovation because we have many stakeholders working together. Having discussions is difficult to reach a consensus. So it's very difficult to deliver tomorrow's innovation if we are still living in this kind of business models. And this is, of course, a bit the case for the pharmaceutical industry. And this is mainly driven by, in my opinion, two main topics. The first one is how the pharmaceutical pipelines are set up. So the pharmaceutical industry, of course, when they have clinical molecules in programs, they want to ensure that they reach commercialization and they can take profit of all the investment that was done during those programs. So they put more focus on the profit that they will have later on rather than the needs of the patient. Of course, the therapy needs to be efficient to provide benefit to the patient, but other aspects should be also considered to ensure that there's really high acceptability from the patient perspective. And the second one is the contribution of patients in clinical trials. So, of course, patients are involved so that the pharmaceutical companies can understand, okay, the molecule is safe, the molecule is effective. However, there's so much more that we can take from patients and their feedback with regards to their experience with a specific molecule and drug product. So instead of looking to the patients as a subject that we kind of use in our clinical trials, we can look instead to the patient as a partner that is there working together with us, and the patient contribution and their feedback are really important and can give a lot of valuable information to the pharmaceutical industry in order to be successful on those programs clinically. Also, as we are currently living in a very digitally oriented environment, going forward, I'm also expecting that patient-centric clinical trials will be expedited due to this trend. So now I just want to give you a bit an overview of the evolution of patient centricity within the pharmaceutical industry. So this started back in 2009. There was a second revision of the Q8 guideline, which specifically stated that every drug product should be designed to meet patient needs. So from this moment onwards, both regulatory agencies and the pharmaceutical industry were working together to make this happen and to ensure that every clinical program was considering the patient, the end user, during the development of the drug products. So then in 2013, we had an EMA guideline which was focused on development of pediatric medicines. So the gold standard for pediatric formulations was, of course, liquid or suspensions. However, we all know from a technological perspective, these are very challenging due to stability issues and also handling errors, dosing errors. So this framework focused on developing solid oral dosage forms for pediatrics and ensuring that this dosage form can be successfully delivered to any pediatric age from neonates until adolescents, and that was confirmed. So with mini tablets, which are very small tablets with 2 millimeter diameter, there's a lot of clinical trials in the literature that you can read about that showed that even neonates would be able to swallow mini tablets. So I think there's a lot of clinical studies now happening for pediatric formulations based on solid oral dosage forms. And then in 2020, we had a similar exercise, however, focusing on the geriatric population. As we all know, older patients are a very heterogeneous population. They have very specific needs, which are different from the adult population, so we cannot really compare them together. And so there was also a reflection to try and support the pharmaceutical industry so that they can also put focus whenever developing drug products that will be specifically administered by older populations. Going forward, hopefully we'll also have some guidelines for development of patient-centric inhalers for pulmonary delivery. The consumer industry is a good example of how to implement a patient-centric approach because their device or their product development is very focused on what the consumer in the end is looking for. So and for the consumer industry, their clinical trials are basically the market research that they do before they start any kind of the program development, and they focus on three main key areas, which are what is the appropriateness of the product that they want to develop for the target audience, how will the target audience use that product, and what is their perception. And with the market research that they conduct and by getting this knowledge from the audience, they can really tailor the products that they are developing to ensure that they are highly acceptable. And I always like to show this example of the mobile phone, and we can see the evolution of the mobile phone over the years. So nowadays, everyone has a smartphone, independent of the age. Even 10-year-old kids can use a smartphone. Older people can use a smartphone, so it's a very intuitive device. And this is a good example of how we would like to achieve patient-centric design. So now I'll focus on pulmonary drug delivery. It's the topic of this conference, of course. There are three main key areas that development of pulmonary drug delivery devices are involved. We have the patient interface and each specific situation of the patient. We have the device, of course, and the formulation. So there's a lot of work done in formulation. We have heard about that already, spray drying, engineering, ensuring that the particles can reach the deeper part of the lungs. However, this needs to be combined with the other two parameters. For example, if we can have the most perfect formulation that in the lab really shows that it can reach the deeper area of the lungs. However, if we don't have a suitable device for that specific formulation, the drug product would not work. And on the other hand, if the device really is very difficult to use, then the patient will not take benefit from the drug therapy. So all these three parameters need to be synchronized, and we need to ensure that we give the same level of attention to each one of them. My presentation will focus on the interaction between patient and device, so I'll not focus on formulation. We already had many discussions about that. So when we talk about drug delivery to the lungs, we obviously need the inhalation device to deliver the formulation to the deeper part of the lungs, and there's a multitude of devices on the market that you can find, different mechanisms, different types of action, and different ways of handling. So as you can imagine, for a patient, this is really a burden. And they really need to have some proper training. If there's a device change, it's starting from zero again. So as you can imagine, especially older patients, this is a really stressful task at times. So this is really something that needs to be considered and paid more attention to, not only ensuring that the device works and the formulation is delivered to the lungs, but also to ensure that the patient knows how to use it. So in my perspective, if we don't consider the patient perspective whenever developing inhalation devices, these will fail for sure, because if you don't have patient acceptability, there's no purpose in bringing a drug product to the market. So now just a bit overview about what is on the literature. So and we talk many of the things I'll say in my presentation today were already touched yesterday, and we already talked a lot about considering the specific needs of each patient, usability, and I also talked that there's a lot of administration errors happening whenever patients are inhaling the formulations for pulmonary route. And I just wanted to show you here two studies, two different examples. So on this first one, this is basically, we have three outcomes, which is the blue one is unsuccessful delivery, the second one is partial delivery, the third one in gray is successful delivery. And as you can see, so this is the control group, and then the second one on the right is a switch of the device from one to the other. And as you can see, there's a high tendency for the patients to have more unsuccessful delivery whenever there's a change on the device. This is obvious, of course. There's a new learning process that needs to be conducted, and many times the mechanism of the device is changed. So training is really important, and this study shows that. Another one is a comparison between so the percentage of administration errors between three different types of DPIs and one MDI. Of course, for the MDI, and with this was also touched yesterday, the mechanism is active, so there needs to be a synchronization between activating the device and inspiring the aerosol by the patient, whatever for the whereas for the DPIs is a passive mechanism. So, but even between DPIs and different types of DPIs, you can see that there are differences. So definitely the design of the device really impacts the administration by the patient. This is just another study, very quickly to go through it. So this was an observation study over a 40-year period on device administration. You have three different, again, outcomes: correct delivery, acceptable delivery, or poor delivery. And for the three outcomes, you can see that you have a flat line over the 40-year period. What does this mean? It means that from the moment that the patient starts using the device in a specific way, he will not change it. And this is why training is really important. And it's not training on the beginning when the patient is starting the therapy. There must be continuous sessions over the time to ensure that the patient keeps using the device correctly. This is a video that I always like to show when I give a talk on inhalation therapy, and I think this is just a couple of seconds, and it will basically give you my perspective without me giving you any words. Oh, there's no sound. No? I don't speak, right?
Well, sometimes.
Okay, we'll just see it on mute, okay? Maybe So this is basically, I'll just give you so Dr. House is talking with the patient who is doing inhalation therapy, and he asks her if she's using she's complaining that she doesn't feel any benefits of the device in her symptoms. And he asks her if she's using the device correctly, and she says, yes, do you think I'm stupid? And you'll see how she uses the device. Now she'll show. I think this pretty much sums up what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So we are all involved in the field. We know how inhalation devices should be used, but for a patient who doesn't have this knowledge, of course, they perceive their own way of using the devices, and if they don't have adequate training, these things will happen. So this is a study that was recently published, and I like to bring it because it gives, again, an overview on usability and understanding how the clinical trials are organized and if they really assess how patients use the device. Of course, we all know now that the regulatory agencies are pushing more, and now it's the case that pharmaceutical industries need to show and to prove that patients know how to use the device before bringing it to the market. But this study basically did a literature review on clinical studies with the inhalation devices, and they just tried to understand how many studies were showing or were assessing the usability by the patients. And what you can see is that, so these are two different areas of focus. So both in asthma and COPD. On the right side, you have for biologics. On the left side, you have for small molecules. And what I'm trying to point out is that, for example, for small molecules, you can see that 88% of the studies did not reported the inhaler technique used by the patients during usability, while for biologics we had 98%. So usability is very important, and this is something that definitely needs to be assessed during any clinical trial involving inhalation devices. So I'm just trying to point out that here, that it's really important to ensure that patients know how to use devices. So now I'll talk you through two different examples. One is a spacer, and these are two. This work is really not mine. One is from one company called Trudel Medical. The other one is from Boehringer Ingelheim. So the Trudel Medical example is based on a spacer, a patient-centric approach for designing a spacer. The second one is an inhalation device. And they proposed this framework on how to design inhalation devices using a patient-centric approach. And you can see that you have four different phases. In each phase, you have three different sections. First one, and you can see it by the different colors. First one is patient involvement in that specific phase. Then you have the technical part where you are testing some specific attributes or designing some prototypes, and then you have the testing result, which you evaluate if really you're achieving the goal that you are looking for. So for the spacer example, you have the whole process with the four phases. For the inhalation device, you'll see that this is a phase 4 example. So the product was already on the market, and they did a new design engineering based on the feedback that they were getting from the patients in order to optimize it further to ensure that really patients can benefit from it. So starting with the Trudel Medical example. So this was for a spacer, like I mentioned, and they started, of course, by doing a survey to understand what is the patient perspective regarding spacers and what was their concerns or negative feedback. You have here an overview of different aspects. So spacers are too big to carry. patients feel embarrassed to use it outside their home setting, or if they need to be in a private environment to use it. They don't look the way it looks, and etc. So with this initial survey, they try to understand what are the patient perspectives that they should really focus on the design of the device. And the main insights were that in terms of negative factors, like I mentioned, so portability is very difficult because it's a big, usually spacers are big devices. They feel embarrassed to use it. They would have preference for pocket-sized spacers because it would be easier to carry, and like they don't really need to show it. Appearance also something discreet that they can possibly use in a social environment without really people realizing what it is. And they would have preference for a two-in-one design, like something that you could use both as a spacer, but also like a pocket where you can put the inhalation device inside and carry it on. So now moving to phase 2, the prototype development. So they of course consider the patient feedback. So they focused on designing a 2-in-1 chamber plus case design. They proposed 2 prototypes initially to the patient population, and they conducted the initial handling study to understand to perceive the patient experience. So these were the 2 designs that were prepared, and my question to you is which one of them you think was selected by the patients, A or B? And what's the reason for that decision? B, yeah. Any other comments? It was definitely B, but the reason was that it fitted well to their pocket. So that was the main reason. So as you can imagine, patients, their preference can be something totally different of what we are thinking about and not really related to the design. So there's a multitude of things that we should consider whenever designing the device. So we move now to the phase 3, industrial design development. So of course they explore the language of the patients in the design of the device. They improved usability and aesthetics, of course, to be appealing to the patients so that they can use it and accept it. And they have prototyped 10 designs. They have drafted 10 designs from each 3 were prototypes. So here you have an image of the 3 different prototypes and the draft of the designs based on the patient feedback. And this was the final one that was selected, as you can see. So this is a spacer that also works in a case. You can see the MDI is inside the spacer. So this is the 2-in-1 prototype that the patients were looking for. Oops. Of course, this was done, but they need to ensure that the spacer really works and brings benefit to the patients and to the therapy. So they did, of course, an evaluation of the administration, and here you have the results. So this is the one inhalation device. So it's Ventolin as a reference that they have used. And here you can see, so this is on the right side is the use of the inhaler alone, and on the left side is the use of the inhaler with the spacer that they have designed. And you can see that you can achieve the same level of delivery with a 2-second delay on the synchronization by the patient with when you apply the spacer as compared to no spacer. So that really brings benefit to the patient because then the administration is not so dependent on the synchronization by the patient. So this is the end result. As you can see, you have the case which also acts as a spacer that patient can put it on the inside, and then he can use it as a spacer for the therapy. So the second example is Respimat, as you all might know, from Boehringer. So the Respimat platform is already on the market for many years, and it was considered as easy to use by the Arthritis Foundation. So these patients for sure have handling issues, so that's a good thing. And still, Boehringer were thinking, okay, is there anything else more that we can do to ensure that patients really can use the device correctly and efficiently? So they knew that the device was easy to inhale, but in terms of usability, is there anything else that we can do? So this is already a phase 4 because the product was already in the market, and it's the ongoing market feedback from the patients and trying to continuously improve the device. So of course they went to the patients, they tried to get their feedback, understand what else they can do to improve the device, and then they came with the newer version of the Respimite, which is on the market since 2018. They managed to enhance the handling, they upgraded the dose indicator, and the design is also used to, so it's a multiple design, a multiple dose inhaler, so it's reusable. So this is just a comparison between, so the reusable is the new platform since 2019. There's just here some comparison about different aspects of the inhaler. I'm not going to really focus on this, just to give you an overview of some changes that were done. So what I want just to point out is the main changes that they did that help the patient handling and usability of the device. So they did an automatic detachment of base when empty to change the cartridge, automatic delocking of the device also during change. So this is, in a way, it's reducing the effort by the patient to do the handling of the different mechanisms involved with the device. And we also know that patients might have acuity, visual acuity issues, so they might not see very well. So they have increased the size of the dose indicator for the patient to really understand what is the number of doses that are still available. And they also changed the design for the patient really to understand, okay, this is the time that I need to change the cartridge. So they enhanced the dose indicator, they improved the readability, and they also improved the size for better grip. So this is a good example of, and I like to show it because, okay, you have a product on the market that really works, and patients can take benefit, but of course there's always something else and much more that you can do to keep supporting patients. So with this, I'm reaching the end of my presentation. In summary, patients, in my perspective, are really important for any drug product development program, and we can really use their feedback and experience to design appropriate drug products that in the end can really increase their acceptability and compliance. So we can use patient experience to refine and reframe our problem statements during drug product development. With that, we can establish suitable designs for the target patient population, and we can also understand the value of repeated usability studies, because with those studies, we gain knowledge and feedback from the patients that later on we can use to rework and improve devices. So I'm a big fan of, and I really liked Ulf's presentation. I'm a big fan of digital technology, and I think this will have the importance with inhalation devices will grow in the future. This was also related to my question of being an add-on and why not having it permanent in a way. But I understand the concept and why you mention it that way. Of course, we cannot make it dependable on the use. Because we cannot ensure that everyone has a smartphone, but I think that will play a key role going forward. So an interface between smart inhalers and smartphones, and the interlink between the healthcare provider with the information, the data that is being generated in the apps. and the patient also can review this data, understands if he's really inhaling correctly or not, which is something that Ulf also demonstrated with the technology that his company is providing. So I really see the future and hoping it goes in this direction, because this also helps more and more the patient to be more independent, and that's also a base for patient-centric drug product delivery. So just to finalize, these are my own opinions, nothing related to Takeda and the company that I'm representing, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you for a nice presentation. And does anybody got some questions to Nello so he can answer? Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel, for a nice presentation. To your knowledge, are you aware of any case of pharmaceutical insurance company that is using the digitalization to track the patient and if they're performing correctly? Has it happened yet?
That's a good question, and that's always a challenge, you know, to ensure that whatever we're developing, the insurance companies will pay for it, to remove the burden of the price to the patients. I don't have that knowledge, but in a way, I think that's linked to patient centricity, you know, because if you design a device that you know that patients will benefit from it, and really the outcome and the compliance and the therapeutic effect is optimized, then that will also push the insurances to provide or to reimburse, because there's really a benefit that the patients can take from it. Of course, it depends on how much money is involved, but I think by using this approach and ensuring that what we are providing to the market, if it's digital or not, independent of that, I think there's more possibility for insurance to play the game also, because they also see the benefit that the patient is having on it. So it's money well invested. I don't know if I answered your question.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Taylor, for a nice presentation. Just a quick question. Do you know how do they define this acceptable use? Because there is correct and incorrect, which is pretty obvious. But how do they define how acceptable is this if someone uses the inhaler? You showed this one graph with years and how the progress is going. I'm just curious, how is this actually thought?
I cannot really tell the specifics right now. I will have to go through the paper again. I think it was an observational study, so they basically saw how people were using the device, and probably there was a scale to grade, and then based on the grade, you'll be useful, successful, acceptable, or not acceptable. But yeah, I need to check the paper again, and we can talk about that later. Yeah. But that's a really good question, and that's something that it was also part of my PhD thesis was in this topic, and something that we were really trying to understand is how, whenever you do clinical trials that you use patients, how are you really evaluating performance, and how is that done? Like, what methodology you use, what methodology is validated, how should you do that? So that's a really good question that should also be considered whenever you are designing and doing some clinical trials with patients. Because if the methodology is not suitable, then the data you generate is pointless, you know. So yeah, good point.
Any other questions to Nello? Okay, so I guess for now, that's all.